Welcome back, everybody, to the Daily Racing Show here at RacePlazaMedia. My name is Milan.
My name is Pia.
And today we're going to do our top 5 year-end MotoGP talk. Yep,
Yes.
That is a good sentence.
That is exactly what this is called. But yeah, we're going to talk about our top 5 moments of this MotoGP season, as well as our kind of takeaway from our very first season with MotoGP as brand new MotoGP fans coming into the series as newbies, what our experience was this year. So we're going to start off with our top moments, and then we're going to go in chronological order, more or less. So we missed the first race.
Yes, we did miss the first race because we were still kind of debating whether or not we were going to watch MotoGP or if we were going to watch the Superbike Championship.
Yes.
But then MotoGP being on HBO made the decision very easy because we didn't have to pay any extra money for the subscription.
Correct.
So we started out with that. And I would say our first highlight was not the first race that we watched, but it was an amazing race, which was the Coda race this year. So at the Circuit of the Americas, right? Also a track where you can find F1, and I think Indy used to race there as well. So it's a very popular track here in the US.
In Austin.
And we actually have one of our viewers or like more Instagram followers who actually went to see the race.
Oh, what a lucky
guy. He went to
guy.
see it, and it was... What an amazing race. This really was the race that sparked my fire and my interest and excitement and passion for MotoGP.
I think that race 100% got us hyped for the season. I feel like even before that, I was intrigued. Also just because of the athleticism that goes into it, like seeing how they lie down in the corners, how low they get, like that they touch the ground, literally the racetrack with their shoulders or their knees or their feet and whatnot. I thought that was very impressive. And also I was gonna say that like watching it all season long has been so much fun, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I still believe, and I mentioned that to you on the last race, like I still don't quite grasp how fast it is, because I think the filming of it doesn't do it justice.
Yes, because a lot of times you have that also in F1, the way the cameras are angled, are either in a way to get a lot of, view in once, and then they sometimes do this shot where they're zoomed in, and then as the cars are coming your way, essentially the camera down, they are zooming out, so it really takes away from the speed of it. And then sometimes when they go around the corners, you're like, okay, well, it looks like they're going 20 kilometers, but in reality they're going like 80 miles an hour. They're swinging, so it can be very misleading. Yes.
But yeah, so I feel like at that point when we were watching Coda, I was still very much on like, oh my gosh, look how they lie in the corners. And I'm still very excited about it. But then, the Coda race was just really kind of got me really excited for the entire season, because we also had Vinales, Maverick. He won the race, and he had his whole Batman kind of thing, which is another thing which we'll get into a little bit later. One of the aspects that I really fell in love with MotoGP, and like just his passion, his excitement. And I mean, now we know that his win with Aprilia was the only non-Ducati win of the feature races this season, which was wild, huge. Huge success for him. So it was really a really fun race.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a fantastic race. Then I would say our second highlight, we are going not in particular, this is like our favorite moment, more we're going in chronological order, was the Marquez brothers double podium in Germany. So at the Germany GP, and Mark came in second, and then Alex came in third place. And it was just a wonderful moment because both brothers are on the same team, or were on the same team. Now going into the new season, Mark is leaving that team. He's joining the factory Ducati team with Pecco Bagnaia. And it was just really wonderful to see both brothers on the podium. Mark also said that that meant more to him than winning the race, being on the podium together with his brother.
Yeah.
And I think this is such a wonderful moment, and it's such a rare moment, obviously, that you get family members or brothers in a team and then on the podium together.
Yeah.
And it was kind of awesome to be part of that.
Yeah. And I mean, if you watched us this season, you know I'm a Marc Marquez girl.
Yes, you are.
And I loved just the celebrations, them both dancing. And I mean, it was just such a fun and such a memorable moment. Like you said, it's such a rare occasion that can even happen. So I think that was really, really beautiful. But then moving on to our third highlight, which was, of course, Marc Marquez winning finally after over 1,000 and I think 43 or 42 days since his last win in 2021. He finally was on the top step of the podium. I think this season was also beautiful how it built up to that moment, because he had at the beginning of the season, I really didn't see him quite as much because I was still getting familiar with some of the other riders. Then we had him on the podium. Then, of course, I think that weekend he had the double win. He won the sprint, and then going into the main race in Aragon in Spain was already like, ooh, is he gonna be able to take the main race win?
Didn't he fall also during qualifying? I think it wasn't that he
that
fell
might be.
and then he ended up winning both races. And then of course it's really awesome to see someone being able to return back to the top.
Yes.
Especially after such a horrific injury that he endured.
Yes.
That impacted his braking capabilities. And then he also, for a while, he was obviously not on a bike that might have been as competitive as far as I'm understanding this. This year he was also on the older Ducati.
Correct.
So he was on the 2023 model, whereas next year he will be on the most current model.
2025.
Exactly. And so it's just really beautiful because it was obviously very emotional, and that he was able to win at home. It almost has similarities to F1 with Lewis winning at home for the first time in over 1,000 days.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just it's such a wonderful magic moment that really, and we'll get into that again, but when he's then in his grandstand, right, and they're celebrating Mark specifically, and you can see all the excitement with the marshals, and it was a very emotional moment. It was very beautiful. And then of course you get to see Dancy Mark, because Mark is a little dance mouse, I would say. And it's so funny because when they're in their race gear, obviously they're very stiff because it's supposed to protect them. They're not supposed to be very
Which
movable.
I find it even more entertaining than when they dance,
and
because
then
they have a little
they're doing like this. So it was really, really awesome. And it was just a wonderful moment. Regardless, I think, whether or not you are a Marc Marquez fan, you don't have to be a fan of him to understand the heaviness or the
weight
of that
win.
moment.
Yes,
exactly.
100% agree. And not only did he win in Aragon, but he ended up winning back to back.
Yes, he won.
Which was really nice. He ended up winning the following race in San Marino, also, which is another moment that we want to highlight. And it's not necessarily a good moment, but it was just a very memorable moment for us. So that was a moment where Jorge Martin had his bike fail of the season, where he had this moment where he decided, and he ended up taking the blame for it as well, where the weather was kind of weird, and it was starting to rain a little bit, and he made the call. He wants to go in, he wants to swap the bike, because I'm assuming he was like, oh, I want to be one of the first ones on it, because he had a feeling it would rain a lot more. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He had to go back in, switch the bike again, which hurt him. At the end, he was able to come back and still earn at least one single point.
That's a cool thing also with MotoGP, because they do extended points.
Agreed.
So it's not just until 10th place.
Agreed.
So it makes it a little bit more competitive, especially for the midfield. But so he essentially had to do a double bike swap.
Yes.
And he was not the only one to do it, but because he at the time was obviously battling for the championship against Pecco, and I think this was also a turning point. Even though Pecco didn't win the race, he ended up taking over the lead of the championship at that point again. So it was a very vital thing. And it was a very crazy moment. I think we were all surprised. And then Mark ended up winning the race, because it was the perfect conditions for him.
Like
because
mixed conditions.
Exactly, because he races exceptionally well in difficult conditions. And they said, I think also he does very well on tracks where they go counterclockwise.
Yes, that's true.
So it was really, really awesome.
Yes, I agree.
Or it was an awesome race. Not obviously awesome for Jorge, but it was a cool moment to see, because if you're new to MotoGP like we were, you first of all you learn really quickly that you don't there's not a requirement to change your tires.
Yes.
There's no pit stop requirement.
Yes.
Sometimes like the punishment people will get is like a longer lap.
Yes.
And stuff like that. So this was a really cool moment for us to see.
Because we also, until that point, we didn't really have a wet race.
Correct.
Yet, a rain race. So we didn't know exactly what that would entail. And then that they would have to, I mean, it makes sense. They would switch the entire bike.
Yeah, that makes
that
way
they would
more
have
sense.
a second bike already set up with the rain tires and maybe different setups in different ways. But to see it was really interesting. And it was just really unfortunate for Jorge that it was just the wrong call at that time. But it was definitely a memorable moment for us.
And I honestly am hoping, because we had one more rain race, but everyone was already on rain tires.
That was Thailand.
Exactly. So there was no need. I do hope that maybe in next year's season we get one where that is the right call.
Yes.
Because I think it will be very interesting to see strategy wise. Do you do it earlier? Do you do it later?
Yes.
And also I'm unfamiliar with how much time on average do you lose when you. So there's so much intricacy around it.
Yes.
So I'm very excited, and I'm hoping that we'll get a race like that next year.
I agree. And then moving on to our final moment, we'll have some couple honorable mentions as well. But our final moment is, of course, Jorge Martin, the Martinator, winning the overall rider championship. Not only did he win his first championship after this big rematch with Pecco from last year, but he was also the first, what's it called, satellite rider, because he was not with a factory team. And I mean, it's huge. And I mean, just a rider world championship is such a huge achievement. And I do have to say, and I've mentioned it in previous videos as well, at the beginning I was going back and forth if I was rooting for Pecco. I think at the beginning I was a little bit more Pecco leaning. Then it changed for me, because also Jorge just surprised me. I mean, he was incredibly consistent. We now know that
he is Mr. Consistent.
Exactly, because he only won 3 main races. He won 7 sprint races. However, Pecco, on the other hand, won 11 main races, 7 sprint races. However, Jorge was just so much more consistent every weekend, including, of course, he was Saturdays. He was incredible.
Yeah, he was on the podium 33 times. And it just proves that consistency is really key when it comes to winning championships like that. This year we also had that in the F1 season. You know, Max was obviously very dominant in the beginning, but then later on he wasn't as dominant, but he was consistent. Then we had in Dakar at the very beginning of the year, we had Carlos Sainz Senior winning Dakar without ever actually winning a stage, but he was Mr. Consistent, right? Him and his team. So it was really awesome.
Yes.
If you watch the channel, I am a little bit more of a Pecco Bagnaia guy, but I'm still very happy for Jorge, because next year he might not be on a bike that will be as competitive, because he will not be on a Ducati bike. So it was nice for, and I'm happy for him that he was able to get that win in there, because I didn't have anything against Jorge. I just decided that Pecco would be my guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me what switched it also was because I had found out that Jorge was talking about like his mental health and that he's talking to a therapist. And I love that he was so open about it too, because it's not something everybody would talk about necessarily, but and also that he made it a point to focus on it, and it clearly worked out for him. Because without it, I don't think he would have been as consistent, because mistakes had happened, but he went like it, just like he was over it. And also a lot of his post-race interviews, if races didn't go quite as well as he wanted it to, he was still very calm.
Yes.
I guess. Yeah. I think not that Pecco isn't. Like Pecco is also, but I feel like Pecco's demeanor seems very different from Jorge.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I just had a little bit more of a liking to Jorge Martin. So congratulations to him, of course. So now let's talk about some of our other takeaways from the season.
Okay. So first things first, I'm going to ask you actually, before that, have you watched any motorcycle racing besides Supercross, because this is kind of off-roading, so it's different? Have you ever watched anything like that?
No, I don't think so.
Nothing?
No, I don't think I've ever watched any motorcycle racing prior. We both road motorcycles.
Yeah,
before.
we both have a license. Yeah, but not like that.
No.
Not like that.
We had a cruiser.
Yeah.
So a little bit more chill.
Yeah, because I had watched last year. I had watched some of the Asia Road Racing Championship.
I remember. Yes.
Because the really cool thing about that is if you're located, for example, like me in LA, the races are really on late at night, late at night, like at 11 p.m. So they're only like 10-20 minutes. So it's very easily watchable. So I was already I watched some of it, but MotoGP is definitely a whole different monster. And I think because it is the top, or it's the elite of two-wheel racing.
Yes.
Like, you don't get any faster than that. Those bikes are specifically built for that racing compared to Superbike, where those are bikes that you can actually buy, and then they're just tuned up. So it was the first time I followed a real championship.
Yeah. But I have to say, I absolutely loved it.
Even though we both actually didn't enjoy the first race that we watched.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, like we had a little bit of a slow start with it. I think like we had mentioned, Coda was really the one that kind of kicked us into gear. And there were, of course, like a couple slower races this season.
I think that's just natural.
That's with all racing, exactly. But one of the things that we had talked about also that we really loved about it are like the fan interactions as well as the celebrations.
Yes.
You know, like them going up to their grandstands. It's like that they have grandstands in a lot of the different races, that they go up to them, they celebrate with their fans, or they thank their fans for being there even if they didn't win.
They throw their boots or their gloves in there.
Exactly.
What is it? Some of the grandstands have a DJ specifically for their grandstand.
I know.
So it's really awesome because with them being on a bike, they have obviously the liberty that they can get off the bike and then get back on and continue riding.
Yeah.
Where in like a lot of times in motorsports, in cars, you don't really have that because you need someone who will help you clip you in and stuff like that. So, but it is really awesome that you get this fan interaction.
Yes.
I think there was this really famous moment when Marc Marquez won his first race, and then he was kind of like he was bowing to his grandstand.
Yes. Yeah, what a beautiful moment. He went there and
exactly. And it's kind of awesome because they also don't seem to ever be in a rush to get to the usually like the park fem, and then where they do like the interviews and then getting to the podium. There's no really they don't ever seem to be in a rush, which I like.
Yeah,
because
enjoy
the moment.
Yeah.
And that's also one thing. It seems like people also really are celebrating their wins much more intensely than I've seen in other sports.
Yes. And then they always get their flags and they do another victory lap and they interact sometimes with the marshals. They take pictures with them or any of their people that are on the side of the tracks. And it's just
absolutely.
I really like that there's not as much of a barrier. Like, yes, there's maybe it's a little bit easier, like you had mentioned. Maybe it's I wouldn't even say. I was thinking like maybe because it's not that big, but MotoGP is huge.
Yeah.
It's just maybe not quite as big here in the US yet.
Even though the coverage is very well done. Like I really like the commentators. I like the woman that always does the grid walk essentially and stuff like that. Even though we don't tend to watch the pre-race shows really,
not a lot.
And we also really haven't had the opportunity to watch a race live because they do race a lot in Europe, and it's just easier to watch it than when you wake up.
Yes, agreed.
Instead of getting up early for it.
Yeah.
But it is just, it's so intense, like the love for it is so intense. And like those fans really love the sport.
Yes, agreed.
It's not that in other things they don't love the sport, right? But it's just, such a true passion.
There's so much passion and love for it. Yeah, I 100% agree. I also loved watching Pedro Acosta this season. He's had some ups and downs, but I'm so curious to see. Excuse me. A little hair.
Cut it out.
Excuse me. But just like, of course, he went into the season with so much hype behind him. And like, yes, he had ups and downs this season. He was definitely not Mr. Consistency.
No.
But he had some great moments. He was on the podium, especially the Coda race. He came in second, I believe. And after that, he didn't have quite as many podiums. But he showed a lot of grit, a lot of great racing. Clearly, he still has a lot to learn. But I'm excited to see his future because we're watching the beginning of his MotoGP career, where a lot of the other riders, of course, have been in MotoGP for a little bit longer. So it's nice that we catch his beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
To see how it goes. Because I definitely intend to watch a lot more MotoGP in the future.
Yeah, especially because it's so easily watchable. The races are usually not particularly long.
Not too long, yeah.
40 minutes, 50 minutes maybe, depending on, the track. Sometimes things kind of change, right? But it's a really, really awesome sport that I'm glad that we took the time to watch.
Yes, agreed.
I will, even though I know that this season was decided probably by Saturday races, I will also continue not watching any sprint races next year. Even though I have a huge dislike for the sprint races in F1, here it's a little bit different.
It's very different.
It's quite because it's consistently, and it's not just the top 9, I believe, that get points.
Well, it's also it is a new feature as well that they do it, but it's like the results are vary a lot more than they do for F1.
Yeah, correct.
For the sprint races versus the main races.
And one thing that I wanted to say about Pedro too is, and I think this is something I feel like we've also learned, is that people crashing out is quite normal.
Yeah, I was really surprised
it's
going
like
into
people
it.
crash out a lot more than I thought. And of course we had some people that crashed out excessively.
Yeah.
But it also, I think it's kind of nice that, Pedro Acosta crashed out a bunch of times, right?
Yeah.
But also because it is on a bike, usually the damage of it and the recovery cost is not so devastating as in other sports.
Yeah, it's just harder for them to rejoin the race.
Yes, rejoining.
Like sometimes, I was surprised because at the beginning, I feel like, of the season, we didn't see anybody get back on the bike.
Yes.
It was like they crashed, they're out.
Yeah.
But then towards later on in the season, there was a couple moments, especially with Pedro, he kind of fell and he was trying to get the bike back up to get back out on the track.
I'm assuming it's track dependent.
Oh, of course. But at first, going into the year, I was like, oh, once you're crashed, you're out.
You're done.
It's not 100%. But so that's something interesting that I'm still learning. And like you said, it's new to us, or it was surprising to me about the long lap, that's like a penalty you can get and things like that,
And one other thing that I just realized, I'm assuming this is also has maybe something to do that I'm not in MotoGP as with other championships, but it seems like a lot more focused just on the racing and less around BS.
The drama
around it, but not also in between the drivers or riders. It's also like the FIM. I'm not saying that they're perfect or whatever, but it seems like in other sports you have like the FIA who are just doing a bunch of bullshit all the time, and it's kind of shifting the focus away from what's important, which is the racing.
Yes.
And I feel like, okay, once again, this might have been just my perception because I'm not as deep in it.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like it was just about racing and the drivers or riders and then winning and then moving on.
I do wonder, and please chime in the comments as well, if that might change once Liberty Media overtakes.
Yes, absolutely.
The thing, because I'm sure there's probably going to be like a ride to survive
situation,
situation, and then there might be some other like social media things.
I was just gonna in case you don't know, Liberty Media is also the company that owns the streaming rights and all that stuff for F1.
For Formula One, yeah, exactly.
And they just recently, they sold a bunch of their shares for F1 to buy the rights for MotoGP.
Yeah.
So I think it can be very good for the sport to make it bigger because clearly they helped with F1 to revive it or make it also big in
the US.
In the US, which is a big market now. I mean, we have 3 races here now, but I hope we kind of stay away from the BS because sometimes I'm just like, let's just race.
Yeah, just focus on the racing. I agree. I mean, I had read an article that some people say what might also be good if somebody like Liberty Media has it is calendar-wise. Because MotoGP had a couple inconsistencies this year. There are several races that were either canceled or rescheduled, not necessarily always due to...
One was the flooding, right?
Yeah, it was like sometimes weather-related or economy-related. Like Argentina was canceled because of economy. There was like 2 races because of flooding. And of course, Valencia, they had to rescheduled to Barcelona. So I'm not saying that that's MotoGP related, but some people believe that maybe that might not happen as much. I'm not sure how much truth there is to it, but that's what I had read in an article.
Yeah, but I think either way, I hope it will help grow the sport because it is an awesome sport. And I think there's also, I think maybe they will start building like these personalities.
Yes.
Like, you know, so like you have, if there's going to be a show, like they have these different characters and stuff like that. I'm going to say it already. I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah. You never watched Drive to Survive.
Yeah. I'm not interested in any of that. Yeah. But if it helps the sport grow, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. But I mean, okay. Yeah. Yes, I agree. What I was going to say now, not only is that I really enjoyed it. MotoGP 2024. It might not have been the best season comparatively. And I know we are planning in the future to rewatch some of the older season, or at least a couple races from previous seasons, just so we can learn a little bit more about the history too. But I do also agree that HBO Max with their TNT Sports, they do a great job commentating on it, especially for new fans. I felt I got a lot of information. I learned a lot,
but it wasn't overwhelming.
No, exactly, and it was easy to get into the sport. Like I'm still learning a lot. There's still a lot that I don't know about it, especially like history and also some of the rules related things. But I'm definitely excited for next season. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Cactus Tiger, one of our amazing followers. He's always so kind and chats with us in the comments, and he also said that he's of course excited for next season, and the races that he's watching are because we have 5 MotoGP champions next season, which I didn't know. So it's like I'm grateful that he lets us know these things, so I have something more to look forward to and also to pay attention to, because so we have 5 previous MotoGP champs racing next season, and I think he said it was the first time ever that we have 5 competing at the very same time.
So it's interesting because I had never thought about that. I am aware of the 4 of them. One of them, so it's obviously Jorge Martin, it's Pecco Bagnaia, it's Joan Mir, Marc Marquez, and those are the 4 that I knew about.
Oh, okay.
But I never thought about there's like, oh, we have 4 champions, and then the one that I didn't realize is Quartararo.
Yeah,
that he is also a champion. Yeah. So it's really awesome, and I hope it will be really competitive. I hope we'll have many, many different winners, because this year there was Pecco Bagnaia went on a 4-win streak. Yeah, he won 4 GPs back to back to back, and I think everyone was like, "Oh, he's gonna run away with it now, right?"
Yes.
And I think that's the worst thing that can happen in a championship, that someone runs away with it and completely dominates.
Yeah.
Even if you're a fan of this person. So, for example, I am obviously a Pecco guy, but I didn't want him to run away with it. No. I wanted it to stay competitive and then still win it at the end. But so this is a really awesome stat.
Yes.
And it's really exciting.
I'm excited. And also because I'm slowly getting more familiar with the people. Like, yes, granted, I'm mostly familiar with the people who are in the top 10 this season. But I'm sure my knowledge will expand next season, especially now that they've moved around a little bit and there are different teams. So it's going to be exciting to see how that maybe will change things up.
Yeah, and I think also once, because now we have our first season under our belt, that kind of happened when I got back into F1 again. The second season, then I started paying attention more also to the midfield. Because I'm more familiar with names now. I'm more familiar with the teams. So everything is, I'm not as just trying to catch up or stay on top of it. Now I'm like, okay, I'm kind of already a little bit in it. I already kind of know some things. I know also what to expect from certain people. Like here, there's some people, like obviously we have expectations of like Pedro Acosta. Of course, what's going to happen between Pecco and Marc.
Okay, so now I want to end this with this. We didn't talk about this before, but do you have any
predictions?
Yes.
Okay.
I think to be fair, I think it's a really difficult question, especially with the limited knowledge that we have.
Yeah, and we obviously have no idea how preseason testing is
I didn't watch it. Yeah, exactly.
No, because that's still happening.
Oh,
right?
yes, true.
So we don't know how any of that is gonna go.
Yes.
However, I do believe this might be a championship that will be decided between the main factory Ducati team. So I think it's gonna be between Pecco and Marc. That's just my bet, because they're going to be most likely on the best bike. They're obviously both very experienced racers.
Yes.
They're both very hungry. Marc, even though he was on an older bike, still came third in the championship. He still passed. I'm also an Enea Bastianini guy.
Oh, I love Enea. Yeah.
But Enea was not able to clinch the third place in the Drivers' Championship or Riders' Championship. Yeah. Sorry, guys. So I think that is just my prediction. I don't know if that's true. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will definitely be between Pecco and Mark. And then, of course, if it's between the two of them, we know who I'm rooting for.
I would actually would love for Mark to get it because it's kind of the same thing. I don't want to keep talking about F1, but it's like how I want Lewis to win another one.
Yes.
I just want you to be able to finish your career.
Yeah.
Even though Mark is much younger.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want you to be able to like maybe end your career in peace.
No, I agree. And I am hoping that it will be a fun, competitive season. Maybe we'll have some more different winners. I definitely am predicting that it's going to be between the two of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're also saying it's going to be one or the other. I mean, Pecco and Mark are saying like it's going to be one of the two of them who's going to win.
I think it's going to be very intense.
It's going to be very intense, but I want it to be beyond them too intense, you know? I want the intensity. I want to because also like this season between the first two, between Jorge and Pecco, and third place, I think there were 100 points. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
So I want there to be less of a gap.
Yeah, absolutely. I also I don't want either of them, first of all, of course, to run away with it, and I also don't want it just be this guy wins, this guy wins, this guy wins. I want a bunch of different people to win, at least 5+ different riders, right? Ideally, I would actually love to see Jorge Martin be able to hopefully be a little bit competitive.
Yes, agreed.
I don't want to hold up my hope too much, because it will be difficult in a bike that is most likely not up to par with the Ducatis. That's just the truth of it. I'm hoping they'll able to get something together. He will be able to find a setup that works for him. Yeah. And then hoping that he might be able to at least get a couple wins in there. Yeah. At least some sprint races and stuff like that. But hey, maybe he'll surprise us and win it, you know?
We'll never know. We'll find out 2025. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Do you have any predictions if you haven't already shared them with us? But let us know, please, what your thoughts are. What were your thoughts on this previous season? And we are very excited for MotoGP 2025. I can't wait.
I feel like this is because now we're at the end. Every essentially major championship has now ended. I'm so excited for next year already. I know a break will be good, and then we have like, of course, the car and all that stuff coming up. But I'm already giddy for it.
Oh,
you know?
100%.
I'm so excited for it.
I'm excited. I'm thrilled. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe
and comment.
Yes, and then we'll see you guys here again for another video. Bye.
Bye-bye.